Hey everybody, welcome to Two Out the First. I'm Ryan Balaji. It's February 11th. It's great to have you here today. We have plenty to talk about, and some of this is obviously going to be related to LIV Golf's ratings over the weekend, which you may have seen were not particularly good, but we're going to talk about them if you haven't seen them. We'll also talk about some of the high fashion grifting style choices that the Cleeks team's going to be making, apparently, thanks to their new high fashion lineup of bags that cost like $5,000, which, all right, sure, whatever. Why the hell not? We're here. And then we're going to talk about Tiger Woods choosing to not play at Torrey Pines after all. We'll talk about that just for a quick second. And then some improvements on the LPGA in terms of pace of play front, and Nelly Korda giving the thumbs up, the seal of approval over the weekend at Bradenton about all of that. So first, let's talk about our sponsor, Swanee's Golf. Check them out, swanees.co. Use the promo code GolfNewsNet25 and save 25% off of your first order. All right. The ratings are in for LIV Golf Riyadh, and they are bad. And they are very bad. I mean, really, 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 really bad. So we talked about this on Twitter, I believe. I don't think this was a podcast or anything. But we talked about the first ratings outpost number of the year for LIV. That was 12,000 people on average that were watching that first round on Fox Sports 2 from Wednesday afternoon. The event started under the lights, and so they did it Wednesday or Thursday, Friday, Saturday rather. So Thursday afternoon, and they knew this was kind of a box checker event for the week, right? They knew this was one of the likely least attended tournaments of the year. Not as many people come to it, so they were going to come up with a gimmick. They wanted to come up with something to get people to watch it during the day, so it wasn't competing with anything, so they were going to play it under the lights, which sounded like a great idea. There was really nothing wrong with playing under the lights. I have no issues with any of that piece of it. But the worry had to have been that there weren't going to be people watching this because it's going to be on Fox Sports 2, which has about half the distribution of Fox Sports 1, which, again, cable distribution isn't what it once was even 5 years ago, not even 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I mean, it's just decimated by the day. And so with Fox Sports 2 being in about 50-ish million homes in America, less than half of that of the CW, and the schedule change and the time of day, you kind of figured it wasn't going to be that great. So, I mean, 12,000 sounds bad, and it is bad. Don't get me wrong. There are lots of shows that do better than 12,000 people watching on average. However, I kind of figured that was going to be the case for at least that first day, just because it's a weekday, middle of the day. People weren't quite sure about the timing, all that stuff. Fine. So we wind up going fast forward, go Friday, probably similar number. Saturday, we get that number today over on the Twitter machine, and I have shared that out just in case you're interested in taking a look at the numbers for yourself. Click Clack at Click Clack has shared some. Josh Carpenter is probably your other guy also if you're interested in ratings data of these types of things. They're usually the ones that have it. We'll cite Josh here in a few minutes, actually, talk about PGA Tour ratings. But if you look at the final day's competition where Adrian Meronk wound up winning for the first time on LIV, he winds up getting the first. Well, they have about half of the round, the first half of the round on Fox Sports 1, and then they kicked it to FS2. And it's going to be like that sometimes, right? I mean, we watch that with professional golf on the men's side, right? You get half of the round on Golf Channel, and then you have the other half on a network or something. And so it kind of splits the audience. But usually you go the other way. Usually you start on the smaller network and build up to the bigger network. That's usually what you want to do. That didn't happen here, and that's okay too. But if you look at the viewership for the 10 a.m. to noon portion on Saturday, that was on FS1, they averaged 54,000 viewers. Then you went to FS2 for the remainder of it, and they only carried 31,000 average viewers. So not good. Not good at all. I think that the Fox folks probably would have told you they'd have been happy if they had like 75, 80,000 on FS1 and then carried 50,000 maybe to FS2. But they know FS2 it really doesn't do a whole lot for them. I mean, it gets them sub fees, right, which is still important in cable carriage terms, but it doesn't really serve as a programming hub for them so much as a programming dump off. Like they air Saudi League soccer and Canadian League soccer and all kinds of different sports that don't really have a U.S. following on that channel because they have the rights to it, and why not? And that's kind of where LIV fell into, at least in this first tournament. So not very good at all. You know, again, 54,000 people is is not particularly great. And if you're gonna, that's just not a number you can really tout, right? As my buddy, my co-host from the Road to French Lick says, put it on the Ocho. I mean, even the Ocho, which really now is ESPN News. I mean, ESPN News on the weekends shows like badminton and kickball reruns and cornhole and random ball sports that I've never heard of. And that's probably still doing just as well, if not better than what LIV Golf just experienced for the last few days. Now, that said, we knew going into it, I think, if you were honest with yourself, you knew going into it, there weren't going to be a ton of people watching this event. New channel, for one. Two, weird time. You know, most people don't think about watching LIV Golf in that time frame. They usually think about it from that 1 to 6 time frame. So that, also the Super Bowl. So there are some things to think about there. But even still, I think your next week's number, the number for Adelaide, will give you a little bit better idea of things, where they stand, and then yeah, maybe that'll crack 100,000. We'll see what happens there. But those numbers are just downright atrocious. And you can come at me with but streaming, and yeah, I guess, but streaming, that doesn't really add a whole lot to it. And the retort of that happens every time but all the real fans watch on streaming. Okay, that's fine. How many of there are you? Because those numbers never get released, and that's probably for a reason. If you've been around information long enough, the good numbers, the good stuff gets released, right? It doesn't matter what it is. They say, oh, well, we had such and such number of people watch on streaming. I mean, NBC Sports loves to do that. Total audience delivery numbers. They take their streaming numbers and they bolt it onto the Nielsen numbers and go, that's our total audience. Fox Sports had something like 16 million people, 15 million people streaming the Super Bowl on Tubi. I think there were a lot of people who thought this wasn't going to be a record-breaking number. Turned out it was. 126 million people is the combined audience that Fox estimates for what was an absolute sleeper of the game. So when there's good data, you share good data. When there's bad data, you only share the stuff that sounds kind of good, or you make it sound kind of good. So please keep that in mind when you think about the streaming numbers for anything. By the way, that's also true of the PGA Tour. We would hear about those numbers if they were incredible. So to switch over to the PGA Tour point of things, right, where you have the ratings for the Phoenix Open, the final number was, I believe, 2.8 million, 2.9 million in the end on the average for Tom Dietrich to blow everyone away by 7. Blowout wins obviously don't tend to do as well, right? People just kind of tune off because they know the outcome's going to happen. But still, you had Scotty Scheffler part of it. You had Jordan Spieth part of it. So that probably kept some people engaged for quite a while. I thought Dietrich played great. Daniel Berger played great. He was a pretty good foil for a while. Tried to track him down, just couldn't get there to him. And I thought it was a worthwhile battle. And that number is up from last year's 2.4 million when Nick Taylor won. And that number was on NBC. This tournament's usually on CBS. Bled well into the Super Bowl, so that also hurt the numbers quite a bit. This year, that wasn't really so much the case, right? It kind of just dovetailed perfectly. So that worked out pretty well. But and that means you had 500,000 more on average than last year's final round. That's a good thing. But if you look at the longer term view, it's a bad thing because the average rating is typically closer to 4 million people who watched this tournament in the 3 years prior to the last 2. So yes, up over last year, down substantially, more like by close to 30% over those prior years where you had Scotty win twice and Brooks in the mix back when he was still on the PGA Tour, stuff like that. So a couple of weeks worth of ratings data that is up compared to the prior year, but down in the overall trend. And that's kind of where things are in golf. So it's not good for LIV, obviously very, very bad for the first tournament. That's also not good for the PGA Tour either. It's, again, up relative to last year, which may have been the nadir. I don't know. But yeah, not so good. And last year we also had that run of winners where you're like, who is this? That also led to some problems. But if you look at the numbers on cable to start the year, they're worse. That tells you something about where cable is, where viewership is. There's kind of this this theory going around. I think it's a pretty good one, just about streaming in general, that yes, you generate younger audiences when you go to streaming. There's nothing wrong about that. I think that data is very accurate. However, the part that we miss is that you lose a lot of older people. You lose a lot of folks who watch it in other means and aren't going to try to figure out how to watch it some other way. They'll just do something else. And golf has a very old audience compared to other sports. That doesn't make them any less valuable or interesting. But if you're trying to push toward different platforms, it's going to be a struggle. So that's why we still have golf on cable. That's why we still have golf on network TV. Those are the best places to connect with the golf audience. But people aren't watching golf in the same way as they were 3-4 years ago. And that, I think that is going to be a lasting problem. I think at this point, you're going to see some recovery, but it's going to be a lasting problem relative to those years. So just something to keep in mind overall. All right, let's talk a little bit about this week's Genesis Invitational. We've got Torrey Pines South hosting for 4 rounds. You got a 72-player field. So this is the first signature tournament that has that minimum field number incorporated in it. 72-player minimum. We've got exactly 72. And that won't increase no matter what happens with withdrawals between now and sometime on Thursday. So this is what it is. I'm glad that they've instituted the minimum. I would actually like it to be closer to 90 players. I think that would be better. I think it'd be a better reward, be a better way to showcase players who are playing well currently. I realize having that next 10 and the Aeon Swing 5, that those are good things. I would like to see those expanded just a little bit. What's 18 players difference, right? I don't see a huge difference. And then if you want to have a cut to that top 50 in ties and any player within 10 at lead, now it could be substantial. You still have that cut in place this week. You've got it for Bay Hill. You've got it for Memorial. And they're really silly notions because you could have every player make the cut, every single one of them. And at most, you're going to cut 22 players this week. For what? To say you had one? That's kind of goofy. I don't see the point of that. But if you had 90 players, you say, well, we can cut as many as 40. Now we've got something to work with, right? Or you made it top 60 in ties, and you could cut as many as 30. Something like that. I would still like to see a continued expansion of what getting in signature events, having those opportunities, especially because if you're a player next year in that top 100, you've accomplished something to maintain a PGA Tour card, right? And you're still going to have these fields, and now you're going to have signature events where if you're in the bottom half, you basically have no chance to get into some of these signature events. I think that's unfortunate. I think that should change a little bit. But just keep in mind that for fantasy players, bettors, stuff like that, you've got to cut this week to contend with. Looks like Torrey's going to be tough. Ben Griffin was sharing what you would typically see at like a U.S. Open where he just throws a ball in the air and lets it drop in the rough, and then it dropped all the way to the bottom. But it was probably about 4 inches, 5 inches as opposed of rough. They'll probably cut it once, and it won't be as bad as it probably looked in Ben Griffin's video. But Torrey's still tough. It's still 77-65 from the tips. If there's any kind of wind at all, you can make it 7,900 or 8,000 effective yards. The greens are typically kind of bumpy. They've just had a whole ton of play because they just had 156 professionals on it for the Farmers Insurance Open 2 weeks ago. So they're probably not fully recovered. This is going to be tough. 8 under won this tournament a couple weeks ago with a round on Torrey North and way more pros. I would guess the winning score here is probably closer to 5 under par. This is going to be more like the 2021 U.S. Open than maybe even the 2021 U.S. Open was. So I think that's what to look forward to this week. To that end, also, what the players have to look forward to. Tiger Woods is not going to play. He announced yesterday he's just not quite there yet. I think we talked about it a little bit. Unfortunately, my throat got really dry at that point in time. But Tiger said he's not going to play. He's still going through kind of processing his mother's passing, and he was trying to prepare for it as though she probably would have wanted him to play, but he's not going to play. So Jake Knapp took his place, and we'll see what happens for the field this week. But you do still have 46 of the world top 50 competing. There are 3 players in the top 50 in the official World Golf ranking on LIV. John Rahm is going to drop out of that top 50 this week because he won't earn any points. And then you're one missing of the top 50 that's on the PGA Tour, Xander Schauffele, who we'll see again sooner than later as he starts to make his way back from the injury that he's been dealing with. So should be a great tournament. I know there's probably going to be some Torrey fatigue online. People will go, oh, I have to watch this again. I hate Torrey. Torrey South's so hard. It's not fun. And yes, it's true. It's not a fun golf course. But if we're going to have a tournament with a signature event component and a fake cut, then at least make the fake cut interesting by making the course hard. So I guess there's that if you're looking for a silver lining. At least that's the way I'm going to look at it. Just a quick couple of things before we get out of here. One, I want to give just a couple of minutes to the LPGA, talking about their new pace of play policy. They have done right by their players. I'm very happy to see what they've done, instituting something a little bit stricter. It gets away from fines and gets closer to penalties sooner. That the timing rules really haven't changed, but the enforcement of them will result in penalties sooner, actual strokes sooner. So last year was more like 24 players got a fine, and then about 10 got a penalty. Well, this year had that system been this year's system been in place last year, those numbers would have been about the same, but it would have been 1-stroke penalty and 2-stroke penalties. And that's a good thing. Put players on notice, put them on the clock. Having 5.5, 5:45, 6-hour rounds for threesomes on the LPGA is diminishing the product. It hurts the product. It hurts the TV windows. They don't have unlimited TV windows like the PGA Tour does, where they can almost kind of account for it and still have it air on TV and still kind of finish up neatly, knowing full well it's going to take a while. The LPGA doesn't have that luxury. And Nelly Corda gave a big thumbs up to the change in the pace of play policy. I agree with her. I think it's a good thing. Better enforcement of it is a good thing. The PGA Tour, to their end, has said they're going to start looking at maybe publishing player times, letting you know who the slow players are. This is stuff we've talked about for like a decade. Tell people who the slow players are, find them more often, give them strokes. All of this stuff is not hard to solve. It isn't perfect, right? It's not going to ever be. No one's going to play 415 rounds every week in threesomes. That's not happening. But you can make it work tighter, work better, more predictably, and that's a good thing. And that's what I know the LPGA is striving for. So I think the PGA Tour is finally striving for, after hearing from so many people, and, well, frankly, players too, that things are too slow, hurts the product, something's got to be done about it, and now they're starting to kick into it. I think that is a good thing. Kudos to the LPGA for enacting something with teeth and making sure the players know we're not going to take any stuff. We're not going to give you any more excuses. It's going to cost you actual strokes, which means actual dollars, if you make these mistakes by playing slow. Good things. Last thing today on the show, saw this in my inbox this morning and just kind of laughed a little bit and then deleted it. But Brendan Porath from Shotgun Start and Fried Egg brought it up, and it is funny. So, each of the LIV Golf teams has found some kind of collaborative sponsor in terms of apparel, right? The Range Goats have contracted with Swannies this year. The Legion 13U team uses a Grayson, I believe. Dustin Johnson's team, the Four Aces, uses Extracurricular as theirs. And there's others, right? I mean, there are other fashion houses. But I don't have time to go through them all, and I don't know them all off the top of my head. But the Cleeks, I hadn't really heard of them having a fashion partner. They redid their logo over the summer, which I thought was a terrible idea. I liked the Cleeks logo the way that it was. I thought it was kind of kitschy and fun. They just made it look like a hotel brand logo, which made it way worse. But they announced today that they have started a collaboration with a high fashion house to make bags and other accessories and things. And like the bags are like $6,000, and they have the Cleeks C on it. Like you literally bought it at a hotel. And I don't understand. I really don't understand. There is LIV Golf merchandise being sold, right? I know that is happening. I don't think it's overwhelming in droves. I mean, I have no idea what like the TGL merch is going through either. Some people probably buy both those things ironically. Some people buy them seriously. But no one's buying a $6,000 bag with a Cleek C on it. It's just not happening. I mean, you might as well just, if you could spend $6,000 on a bag, you are going to have it personally engraved for your name, your company, whatever animates you to have personalization on the bag. Not the Cleeks. I mean, I'm sure the Cleeks guys are happy to have some cool looking bags, but no, it's not it. Like that's a total point misser right there. And kind of goes back to the whole point at the start of the show, trying to tie it all together of what is all of this about? Why has all of this happened over the last several years? And it's, $10 billion of economy for LIV Golf. And the end result is no one cares and just goofy stuff happens. And at a certain point, whether it involves Trump or not, golf's got to figure out a way to come back together and get rid of some of the stuff that's happened last year is absolutely insane, that drives people away, that drives the average person away, that doesn't make them want to engage and just go, everybody's in it for themselves, everybody's in it for cash. And the longer that's the prevailing view, the more destructive that is to professional golf fandom in the long haul. So the sooner you can get rid of stuff like that, the better. And this is another thing to have to eventually get rid of. All right, that's going to do it for us today on the show. Thanks so much for watching. Appreciate it. We'll be back with a Wednesday show of 2 Off the First. You can catch us on Golf Newsnet TV. You can also catch us on our social media channels. We stream the show live on YouTube, Facebook, as well as LinkedIn if you are so inclined to follow me there. And you can also find us over at golfnewsnet.com, as well as our partners, Freecast and Free Live Sports. And soon we're going to be on Zeem, Multi-TV, and Distro TV as our next set of outlets, along with local now, too. So, I'm Ryan Balaji. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next time on 2 Off the First. Have a great day, everybody.